All right, so you want to be in the know.
Right.
You want the real deal without having to sift through, all the noise, all the articles out there.
And that's exactly what we're doing here.
Exactly. This is what we do. We take these big announcements like the one we saw today at Watches and Wonders,
Yeah.
Geneva 2025 marriage. I'm talking about the updated Rolex Oyster Perpetual collection.
We're going to dive deep into those announcements and those details and give you the real, important stuff.
Yeah, the stuff that matters.
Our goal is to really figure out what Rolex has done to their entry-level watches and, yeah, what these updates mean for, someone who loves watches.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, my first impression is that Rolex is kind of like tiptoeing here.
Yeah.
It's not like they're like, bam, we're changing everything.
Yeah.
It's more like just like little refinements to, a classic design.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. At first glance, it all seems pretty familiar, right? You still got the 5 sizes, 28, 31, 34, 36, and of course the 41 millimeter.
And they're not messing with the Rolex formula, right?
Yeah.
Still stainless steel.
Yeah.
Still that smooth bezel that, we love on the Oyster Perpetual.
Yeah.
Still that 3-link Oyster bracelet.
That's right.
And the Oyster Perpetual, it's known for being tough, and they're not messing with that.
Absolutely.
You still get those sapphire crystals. They're scratch resistant.
Yeah.
And then the crown and the case back, they both screw down.
Yeah.
Like they should.
Yeah.
And that gives you the 100-meter water resistance. So they're not messing with the core of the Oyster Perpetual at all.
The DNA is still there.
Yeah. So if the core of the watch is basically the same, where the change is, well, the dials are different.
Yes.
Like they're moving away from those really bright, playful colors. The ones the Oyster Perpetual became famous for, like that celebration dial. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah, they're definitely moving away from that.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are they doing instead? What are the new colors?
Well, for 2025, they've got 3 new matte lacquer dial colors.
So you have like a soft lavender, a classic beige, and then kind of a subtle pistachio.
Matte lacquer. That's interesting because, the last generation had those glossy dials that, they shimmered. They really caught the light.
Right.
And now they're going matte. What's the deal with that?
Well, they're saying it's all about making the watch more wearable every day.
Okay.
But I think it also might be them, kind of hinting at wanting to make it more like a tool watch almost.
Oh.
Matte dials, they've always been, a thing in like military watches and professional watches.
Yeah.
Because they're easier to read in, all kinds of light.
Oh, that makes sense.
So maybe Rolex is going back to that heritage a little bit.
Interesting.
It's just a different look. It's not as flashy. It's a bit more discreet.
Understated.
Yeah, understated.
But are they getting rid of all the color, or are there still, some fun options for people who, want a bit of color?
Oh, yeah, there's still color.
Yeah.
So like the new 41 millimeter Oyster Perpetual, you can still get it in bright green.
And if you like the 36 millimeter, they're keeping the candy pink and turquoise.
Okay, so the bright colors, they're not totally gone. It's just that the main options are, more toned down.
Exactly.
Now, I know that the dials are a big part of this update, but I also noticed that they made some changes specifically to the 41 millimeter Oyster Perpetual.
Yes.
Now, I've always thought the 41 was a little, maybe not as proportionally, elegant as some of the other sizes. And with this whole, trend toward a more subtle look, I was really curious to see what they did with it.
So the 41 millimeter has a new reference number, 134300, and it's got this like newly refined case, they're calling it, and they're saying it has more elegant proportions.
Elegant proportions. What does that even mean? Like, how will someone actually see that when they're wearing the watch?
Well, it sounds like they've made some subtle changes to the shape of the case.
Okay.
But the more noticeable thing is that they've made the clasp on the bracelet slimmer. And, a smaller clasp can actually make a big difference. It can make the whole watch feel more balanced and comfortable on your wrist.
Yeah, less bulk is always a good thing. And you know what else I noticed? The winding crown on the new 41, it looks a little bigger.
Oh, yeah.
Which, might not seem like much, but it could make winding the watch feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of these changes together, the new case, the slimmer clasps, they all work together to make the 41 millimeter look more like the classic 36 millimeter Oyster Perpetual.
Oh, so they're trying to create a more consistent look across all the different sizes.
Exactly.
That's cool. Now, I know they've updated the look, but what about the inside? Are they using new movements for the Oyster Perpetual?
Nope, they're sticking with the same movements they used before.
Okay.
So the smaller models, the 28, 31, and 34 millimeters, they all still have the caliber 200, 232.
And that's the one with the silicon sloxy hairspring, right?
That's right.
Which makes the watch, less affected by magnets and temperature changes.
Yep.
And that means it keeps better time.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got a power reserve of about 55 hours.
55 hours.
Now the bigger watches, the 36 and the updated 41, they still use the caliber 3D-230.
Which has the blue parachrome hairspring that Rolex makes. And that one has a longer power reserve.
Yes, it has a 70-hour power reserve.
Wow.
Both movements run at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and they've got Rolex's Paraflex shock absorbers to protect them from bumps. And of course, they're all superlative chronometer certified.
Yeah, and that's not just any chronometer certification.
No.
Rolex has their own standard, and it means that the watch is accurate to within 2 seconds per day.
That's right.
So even though they look a little different on the outside, these are still some seriously high-performing watches.
Absolutely.
And speaking of the outside, we can't talk about Rolex without talking about the Oyster bracelet. I mean, it's like their signature thing.
Yeah, it is. And all the new Oyster Perpetuals still come with the classic 3-link Oyster bracelet.
And it's made from oyster steel, which is Rolex's special 904L stainless steel.
That's right. It's super tough and resistant to corrosion.
And you know what I like about the Oyster Perpetual bracelets? They're all brushed. They don't have those shiny, polished center links that some other Rolex models have.
Yeah, it gives them a more understated look.
Yeah, more tool watchy.
Exactly. And they all come with the Oyster clasp, which has that Easy Link extension system.
Oh, you have the Easy Link?
So you can adjust the bracelet by 5 millimeters without any tool.
Super handy.
It's very convenient.
So we've talked about how they look. We've talked about what's inside them, but now the big question. How much do they cost? The Oyster Perpetual is the entry-level Rolex, so it's always interesting to see how they price them.
Yeah, and they've kept them pretty accessible. They're all still under $10,000.
Okay.
And before the price goes up as the size of the watch goes up.
So what are the exact prices?
Okay, so the 28 millimeter that's referenced to 7 inches and 6200 is $5,650.
Okay.
The 31 millimeter reference 277-200 is $5,800.
Got it.
The 34 millimeter reference 120-4200 is $5,900.
Okay.
The 36 millimeter reference 126,000 is $6,200. And the new 41 millimeter reference 140-300 is $6,500.
So they're a little bit more expensive than the old models, but not by much.
Yeah, just a small increase, which
Yeah.
is pretty normal. Prices go up.
Yeah, inflation.
Exactly. But the Oyster Perpetual is still a really good value for a Rolex.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's recap for everyone listening. What are the key takeaways from this update?
If you like your watches a little more understated and you're looking for something you can wear every day, definitely check out the new matte pastel dials.
Yeah, they're a big departure from the old glossy dials.
And if you weren't a fan of how the old 41 millimeter wore, maybe it felt a little big,
Yeah.
the new one might change your mind.
Uh,
They've made the case and the clasp slimmer, so it should wear a lot better.
And of course, you're still getting those amazing Rolex movements that are super accurate and reliable.
Yeah, they haven't changed a thing there.
And at the end of the day, the Oyster Perpetual is still the most affordable way to get into a Rolex.
That's right. You're getting that classic Rolex design and quality without having to spend, crazy money.
So it's a great option for people who, want a Rolex, but maybe don't want to spend, what some of the other models cost.
Exactly.
So to wrap things up, we've seen Rolex make some subtle but important changes to the Oyster Perpetual. They've kept the core of the watch the same, but they've updated the look with new colors, and they've refined the 41 millimeter to make it wear better.
And that brings us to our final thought for you. With all these new matte dials, which color are you drawn to? And what do you think this change says about what Rolex is doing with the Oyster Perpetual? Are they trying to make it more appealing to a different kind of buyer?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, and you know what I would suggest? Go online and check out some pictures of the old and the new dials side by side.
Yeah.
I think you'll be surprised by how different they look.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's amazing how a small change in color can totally change the whole feel of a watch.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep those watch-loving minds active.
And your wrists stylish.
Bye. See you soon.